just going to do a quick recap really on our strategy and the last 3 years, because actually it's been, you have heard, quite a challenge. I'm really proud of our strategy that we launched in 2019, and since we launched that, and in the last 3 years, despite COVID and everything else, actually it's really made a huge difference to the Trust. As John was saying earlier, we've grown up, but we've really stepped up our ambition, and I think by doing that we've really attracted a lot more support, a lot more income and a lot more respect within the community, and I think how we're seen externally now is quite different to how it was. And I think there's a couple of kind of main reasons for that. I think first of all, embracing the best thinking from social science around how to build movements, how to work with kind of behaviour change theory and all that sort of thing to really create this momentum for people power and people getting engaged has really changed the way we do our public engagement work and will continue to change, and that is already starting to reap huge benefits. And secondly, being bold enough to call for this 30% of land and sea, to say it's not good enough just to protect what we currently have. We need large-scale investment in nature recovery, restoration, rewilding, and to get ecosystems to work again. And being really bold about that, not being apologetic, I think has really kind of moved us on in our ambition and in the messaging externally. So even through COVID, you know, we've massively grown and we've continued to attract a lot of interest from all sorts of different people. So just to expand out a little bit more on our 3 goals, and for me it's really important that everything we do kind of really coalesces around these goals so that we're all really clear what we're doing and we can be very clear with external organisations and with you as our members and supporters what we're actually doing. So we have our 3 goals, and I'm going to explain a little bit more about each 3 of those shortly. I'm actually going to start with the 3rd goal, nature as a solution, because in a way that one is the most new and the most different compared to what we've done before. You know, we've got our 1 in 4 people taking action, which I'll talk about a bit more in a minute, and our nature recovery, that 30 by 30, which David explained earlier. But just thinking about the 3rd goal, for the first time, we've really started to think much more about climate change and the role that we have in the Trust when it comes to climate change. Until 3 or 4 years ago, we probably didn't really talk about this enough or think about it enough. But of course, you know, we all know that it is one of the biggest threats, not only to wildlife, but also to our economy and farming and everything else. And it is a huge threat that we all need to think about. And there are 3 kind of main strategies, 3 things that we need to do as a society. And the first one is turn off the tap, as in cut emissions as fast as possible. The second one is learn to swim. We've got to adapt. I'm afraid it's too late now. We are seeing climate change impacts already, and that is happening now. So we've got to adapt. And the third one is to make that drain bigger, that is to suck as much carbon out of the air as we possibly can using nature to help them. And so with those 3 strategies combined, we actually have a role in all 3 of those. So first of all, we now do measure our organisational carbon footprint, and we're doing what we can to cut that. But actually, because of the land we have, we are more or less carbon neutral, which is quite a good position to be in, because the land that we have absorbs and offsets our organisational emissions. We are committed to being climate positive or carbon negative, so we want that balance to be more the other way, but we are more or less almost carbon neutral already, which is good, but we haven't further to go on that. On the second point, the adaptation point, we're already seeing the impacts of climate change. We had a lot of fires, we've had drought, we have floods, we have all sorts of issues that affect our nature reserves that actually affect our livestock and our staff. So we're starting to look at adaptation plans across our estate now, and that might slightly change the way that we look after our land. And on the third point, of course, that nature-based solutions point, there's now a growing interest in this area, and for me this is really exciting, where we can show the power of investing in nature to really kind of help take as much carbon out of the air as possible. So on to nature-based solutions in a little bit more detail. It is a huge opportunity, so much so that we have restructured our staff teams, as I mentioned earlier, and I asked my good friend John Donnell, who's worked with me at the Trust for 25 years, to lead that work and really take advantage of those opportunities. And our priorities under this programme are to advocate and demonstrate nature-based solutions as a really important tool for not only tackling climate change and pollution, but also driving nature recovery. To develop high integrity schemes that really show a good way of doing it, the best way of doing it. So it's high integrity, high biodiversity positive, etc. Acquire land, go out and get lots of land and rewild and restore that using nature-based solutions finance. And then generate income, obviously, to really help our mission. And do all of that in a really transparent and open way, and hopefully then demonstrate and inspire other people to do that themselves or work with us to do even more. The nutrient neutrality or the nitrate reduction programme is the most well developed of all of those schemes, but it means that we have mechanisms. You know, for years we've had these kind of aspirations to do more for nature and to put nature into recovery. But before now, all we really had was agri-environment schemes and government grants, and obviously charitable income from donations and membership, but it was never enough to really kind of push that envelope and create the opportunity for large-scale investment. And I think the combination of nature-based solutions, nitrates, maybe phosphate mitigation, carbon mitigation, biodiversity net gain, there's quite a lot of things now coming down the tracks, all under this banner of nature-based solutions and green finance. I think the future's exciting and we can really start to do even more, which is fantastic. Just a little word on the importance of the marine environment here as well. And some of you might have heard, and we've got a film about this later, we're doing quite a lot more in the marine environment, and the importance of seagrass meadows in particular and salt marsh is incredible. Seagrass meadows sequester carbon 35 times faster than tropical rainforests, and per hectare, seagrass meadows can trap up to 15 times more carbon, apparently, than tropical rainforests. Obviously, they're not as big, but in terms of that local impact, you know, they could be incredibly important for this agenda. But there's a really important link as well between seagrass restoration and our marine work and the nitrates issues. And that photo in the middle up there is the mud flats in and around our harbours. That should be mud, that should be brown, it should be mud. It's bright green because of that algae that's growing on top of that mud, which is caused by that pollution. So we want to try and reduce that by cutting back those emissions, by offsetting those that runoff from that pollution, and that is a real issue in our harbours now. So we've got to tackle that. So the last thing to say on this is it's not just the direct benefits from delivering these projects; it's also showing the government, and I'll come on to this a bit more in a minute, how important it is that we can show these things are deliverable. It works, we can do it, those markets are there, and we can show the government that it's not that complicated and it's not a huge burden or a huge problem for the economy, in fact quite the opposite. So on nature recovery, on the 30 by 30, this is kind of our overarching goal in many ways. And whilst nature-based solutions gives us a great mechanism for delivering that, the goal is always nature recovery. Now, the 30 by 30 target was originated with the United Nations in 2018, and we very quickly kind of picked up on that and went public with that as a goal for ourselves in 2019. We were probably one of the first NGOs to kind of really go public on that as a goal. It's now been adopted by all of the wildlife trusts, by all of the NGOs, and of course Boris Johnson very famously pledged at the he signed this thing called a Leaders Pledge, which means that many, many countries around the world have also now committed to this goal of 30% nature recovery by 2030. So that is now kind of fully embedded really within all sorts of different places. Now, where are we now? the NGO community believes that probably we're only at about 3% right now, and the way they measure that is by looking at land that's fully protected for nature and it's in good condition. And if you use that as your measure, it's quite low, it's 3%. In Hampshire, we're better than that, and on the island, we're better than that. We're probably more at 6 or 7% because we have a higher proportion of protected areas. But only 50% of our protected areas are in good condition. And as you saw from that picture, those harbours are protected, but they're not in good condition. So we've really got a long way to go still to reach that goal. We have a number of ambitions and commitments under this goal to continue to expand our estate, buy new land for restoration, and our goal, our target, is to acquire 1,000 hectares of new land between 2020 and 2030. So we've already done some, and we've already doubled our estate on the island. Lots more to come, I'm sure. That's our goal, 1,000 hectares. If we do more, even better. And our other goal is to work with partner organisations to restore another 5,000 hectares. So that's working with farmers or landowners or communities or whoever to restore and rewild land across the 2 counties. So those are our kind of numerical goals as a contribution towards this bigger goal of 30%. And what we hope is the bigger goal will be driven by the right policies and the right frameworks through things like nature recovery strategies, for example. Now, we do get some questions about food security. If we're buying farms and we're taking them out of production, what about food security? But, there is no question that in order for nature to recover, we are going to have to transform and rewild some areas of farmland. But that doesn't necessarily need to impact at all on food security. And in fact, a government report recently out says that soil degradation, erosion, soil compaction, pollution, and all of these issues actually cost the agricultural industry well over £1 billion a year. And they've identified biodiversity decline and climate change as one of the biggest risks to food security, actually. So in fact, rewilding and restoring some areas of farmland in the least productive soil areas will help food security rather than take it backwards. And actually what we're trying to do now is work very strategically and collaboratively with these progressive farmers that really understand that we need to adopt regenerative farming practices that rebuild soil health, bring back pollinators, and stop kind of runoff and pollution getting into rivers. So I think these 2 things are really compatible, and it's very important that we give the right messages about this. Farming needs to change, and I think farming knows it needs to change, and we're really working, hopefully with others, to kind of give those more positive messages about regenerative agriculture and the importance of working together with ecology and biodiversity. So our middle goal, goal 2, is all about people. Now, we need to inspire 1 in 4 people, and that has come about really on the back of social science and thinking about how do you create momentum, how do you create this tipping point. And people can do that in a myriad of different ways. Our Team Wilder programme that we launched at the beginning of 2020 has just been brilliant. It's still only the beginning, but it's gone from strength to strength. And it's built on those foundations of that social science and that behaviour change principles, using those sort of nature connectedness and education and learning as those basic kind of beginning steps, if you like. And then using community organising techniques and using kind of empowering techniques to help train and empower other people to lead and act within their communities. And, it is already growing. We're working with nearly 60 groups. We've got, a couple of thousand brand new people that have signed up to take action with us in the last couple of years. And we're training up champions and community leaders. And we aim to have programmes in every town and city, if we can, or at least every local authority area, over the next 8 years. So we have a Wilder Portsmouth programme, we have just starting a Wilder Southampton programme, we're working with other local authorities and other communities, and we hope that we'll have programmes right across the 2 counties in the next few years, and we have a programme in the Isle of Wight as well. And by expanding those kind of communities, what we can then do is really amplify all of our voices. And so, for example, we had the campaign last year about the development proposals at Tipner West in Portsmouth, which is a proposal that the council are making to build houses on a protected area, not just next to it, on it, which actually is illegal, but anyway. We had 25,000 people sign a petition about that, and we had 9,000 people respond to a local plan. 9,000 people normally don't respond to local plans. So that really shows that kind of people power in action. And more recently, with the government announcements under the Liz Truss government, which I will come back to shortly, we had a lot of people respond to that. So that people power, you know, is such an incredible force, and that takes many forms. You've got volunteering, you've got writing letters, you've got wildlife gardening, and everything in between. And for us, for me, it all adds up, and I think we like to amplify all of that to show governments that we care about this stuff. So on to campaigning. As you will know, in September, the Liz Truss government made various announcements, and immediately we were all pretty shocked in the environmental sector because the announcements were very blatantly trying to say, we can't grow the economy because nature is stopping us. We've got to rip up all of these environmental protections because they're stopping us grow the economy. And the RSPB led the charge with the Attack on Nature campaign that we all quickly kind of joined in with, and we did for me it was a really brilliant example of all of the different organisations coming together, working as a group, as a team, no egos, you know, it didn't matter whose logo was on it, it was all about the cause, which is really important. And immediately we just went all out. We have to campaign about this stuff, because actually if we don't, we'd be failing in our charitable objectives. If all of the environmental laws are gone, there's no protections, there's no mechanisms, planning rules are relaxed, there's no biodiversity net gain, there's no nutrient neutrality, there's no protected areas, we actually can't do our jobs. So it's really important that we campaign in the right way. We need to be fact-based, we need to be non-party political, and as long as we do that, it's absolutely fine to campaign, and charities should campaign as long as you do it that's linked to your charitable objectives and you're not party political, which we weren't. You know, whichever government did something like this, they would have had the same sense of outrage, if you like. Now, the mood music has changed since we have had our new Prime Minister come in. However, you know, those details below the surface, although the mood music is much better, those details are still the same. But for me, what was amazing is that the minute the new PM came in, it was very obvious that they realised, don't mess with the NGOs, don't mess with the environment. It's really important. The public do not want more pollution. The public do not want more poor water quality. The public do not want less wildlife. It's not a vote winner. And I think it was really important that we sort of flexed our muscles a little bit to show governments that we want, you know, we care. We want this for our children, for our grandchildren. We need more wildlife and we need a cleaner environment. So it was quite an important thing to do. There's still a lot more detail. The environmental laws are still, at the moment, going to all disappear by December 2023, unless that changes. And we still have a lot of uncertainty about future planning and things like that. But ultimately, you know, for me, it's really important that we continue to raise our voice in a very measured and evidence-led fashion. You know, we're not hysterical, even though some of our MPs, and I thank you if you've written to your MP, I know lots of you have, the response you may have got was, oh, don't be ridiculous. It's all rubbish. They're lying. Well, I'm afraid we're not. And actually, when you look at the detail, there's some very concerning things in there. But we continue on, don't we? So thank you for your support if you did write to your MP. And, you know, don't think this is some remote kind of Whitehall thing. This affects our work every day. We have to fight. You know, at the moment, we're already fighting things like Tipner. That is a protected area that should be protected, and we still have to fight it. But if there's no protection, then, you know, it's kind of game over for some of these protected areas. So it's really important that we do this. And as long as we're not party political, it's all good. So just finally then, all I wanted to say, and this is super cheesy, this is a mirror, so it's really cheesy, but what I wanted to say was just reflect back to you guys in the room because it's hard work what we do. You know, my staff are amazing. I've got the best team ever. I've got an absolutely fabulous team. I've got guys behind the scenes like you guys here that have done all the tech and the films, and I've got amazing teams working with me every single day. And what keeps us going is knowing that all of you members are right behind us. Your support means everything. And I love going into a meeting with an MP or with a local authority leader saying, you know I represent 27,000 members, don't you? And they listen. You know, that's really important. We are quite a force to be reckoned with now. So thank you for that. That really helps keep us all going. And yeah, I'll answer any more questions later, but thank you very much.
It's fair to say the last 2 years has been rather busy, and as has been commented several times, we have doubled our estate, and at this point I'd like to say a massive thank you to my Isle of Wight team, not only for their dedication in delivering all of this work, but also making it happen on the ground. So, and that rolls out to the wider trust as well, all the supporting functions. It's only possible because of our whole trust movement, and obviously the support of our members and other supporters, partner organisations. So, the Isle of Wight has always been fabulous for wildlife. Stats are there. And with our recent acquisitions, we've suddenly become a bit more of a major player on the island, and people are taking notice more and more of what we're doing. So, but in terms of the Isle of Wight, what does it actually look like, and what is it all about? You know, it starts with the restoration of landscapes, restoration of key habitats, providing habitat for those important species that are in decline. And our work today has been really good at conserving those niche habitats, niche species, but it hasn't solved the wider biodiversity crisis. And now is the time to start delivering that through big landscape scale restoration programs. So classic sites like Eaglehead and Bloodstone Copse, fabulous for wildlife. We're starting to link up these sites and give the opportunity for these habitats to expand and the wildlife to increase and thrive. Our iconic habitats, so wildflower meadows, this is Arrington Down, perhaps one of the best pieces of chalk grassland in the country, one of my favourite sites, awash with chalk hill blues through the summer. It's just a really special place. And you know, huge ambition here to extend this habitat right through the chalk ridge. This is all doable within our lifetimes, and something we're looking to really achieve and support. Wetland restoration, delivering key ecosystem services for wildlife, for people, restoring nature, improving water quality, improving functionality. That's going to be a big part of our work going forward. Eelgrass, you know, we're going to keep talking about eelgrass. This is so exciting. It's one of these habitats that everyone just loves. It's got so many selling points. It's got this amazing USP. The amount of wildlife it supports is fabulous, and there's a huge abundance around our Solent coastline. So really important, lots of really good, you know, innovative restoration happening. So again, exciting. And also working alongside other land use, you know, supporting wildlife through agriculture, working with regenerative farming. So we're excited to be developing a partnership with a new regenerative farm startup, the Non-More Home Farm, watch this space. So they're looking at really innovative grazing models, restorative agricultural practices, and working alongside us on our nitrate sites, so very exciting for us. And as Debbie said, it's also about engaging. You know, there's no point in doing all of this amazing work if we're not taking people on the journey at the same time. So getting those messages out, getting people out in the countryside, exposing them to what we do, and making them understand and respect the wider countryside as a whole. So Wild of Wight is also about the big, the bold, the ambitious. So the reintroduction of white-tailed eagles in 2019 was a real game changer. So Forestry England, Royal Dens Foundation made this project happen. It's been very well received, slightly controversial at the start, but this has really captured hearts and minds locally, and these birds are really now iconic in the area. Huge draw for tourism, just a fabulous way to engage people, and it's been a spectacular success. So we're hoping they're going to breed in the next few years. There's 3 territories up around the south of England. Exciting times. Still has its challenges, there are still problems, but as a sector we're working hard to engage with those problems and address those challenges for the future. It's also about the restoration of some more iconic species to our estate as well. So wilder processes, letting nature lead, robust grazing animals being reintroduced to sites to create those habitats that we need. Another subtler reintroduction, so looking at chough, seal bunting, arable bird projects. Maybe the Isle of Wight could become an ark site for white-clawed crayfish, all big on the agenda. And of course the beaver, so I'm not going to steal the easiest thunder, but the beaver is perhaps one of our biggest and most exciting projects, and we're hoping that DEF will be doing the right thing soon, announcing the release criteria for wild release licences. So a bit more detail about the project and the Wild Wight strategy. So as you can see, it's all encompassing, all engaging, and provides a lot of opportunity and a lot of excitement for us. Snapshots are some of the key things we want to do. So it's all about rewilding and habitat restoration. It's the return of those missing species across all habitats, and about abundance. So common is good, giving opportunities for all those common species to thrive, and the rarities will come with it. Working in partnerships, reconnecting, and looking at those nature-based solutions. So this is what excites me now. So this is our land holding, as you can see. So we own about 1% of the island now, but as you can see, there's a big cluster in the eastern Wight, particularly around the eastern Yarra Valley, and the Nunwell Estate and the Chalk Ridge. And I haven't stopped just yet, so there's more acquisitions underway. 2 more in the pipeline, and I like to think big. You know, my team nicknamed me the Lord of the Isle of Wight for my ambitious approach to land acquisition, but this is where it's at. You know, with tenure you can have so much more opportunity to do things, yeah, I'm hoping to buy up as much of the island as I can in my think big. So this is where the excitement starts to happen. So this is Wild and Little Duxmore and Wild and Nunwell. So these are our nitrate mitigation sites. Fabulous. We've got scale at last on the island, from going from little tiny reserves to big chunky sites, so where we can do lots of really good restoration work. We'll start with Little Duxmore. So the weedy fields are just glorious in that sea of improved pasture and intensive arable. It's been a fabulous journey. We've had it for just over 2 years now, and it's thrown up some surprises. So loads of amazing habitat. When we first started, it was just covered in maize stalks and open ground. And then that first spring, we saw this amazing flush of arable flora, so spreading hedge parsley, really notable species. Lots of really good arable flora. It just goes to show, if you give nature the opportunity, it will come, it will thrive. So, you know, this is the first year, so it's incredible. More flora, so such an extent of arable flora on the site. Clive and many others surveyed it, and they recognised it as being of European significance. So it's incredible. And that's the first year. Also, you know, very tame red squirrels. Look at that one jumping on my shoulder. So this is all just flooded in that first year. It's incredible. And now that journey is going through. So the habitats are slightly shifting with succession. We're about to instigate grazing across the site with ponies and old breed cattle, maybe some pigs, you know, doing their thing, creating bare ground, and then sort of helping nature do its thing to restore some of those key habitats and provide this opportunity for wildlife to thrive. The Eastern Yard, this is really, really exciting for me. So we've had our land holding here, started in 2012 with Sandown Meadows, and over the years we've added on bits of land, so we've now got this connected landscape of 300 acres, about 4.5 kilometres of river channel, so just primed for a beaver release. You know, stick the beavers there, they do amazing things. But with that connected landscape, with that tenure, you've got so much opportunity to restore and influence as well. You know, it's great for loads of wildlife already, but our habitat restoration work, our floodplain reconnection work, our engineering work is all being planned to deliver much more function for wildlife and for people. And beavers are part of that solution. You know, nature's great eco-engineer can help support that. So Isle of Wight, stronghold for water vole, but still has its challenges. So again, more work can be done to support that species. One of the winners is Scarce Chaser. You know, 2 of our sites are now recognised by the Dragonfly Society as being of national significance. You know, really important breeding populations, all on our estate. And again, loads of opportunity for restoration of key wetland habitats, fen sites, really quirky little acid springs producing this amazing array of flora. And this is our big site, this is Newchurch Moors. So you can see the lake at the top, that muddy brown lake on the peak site. That's our prime beaver release site, and you can see the river yard on the left of the screen there. So a heavily modified incised channel, crying out for lots of restoration. So a combination of mechanical restoration, beaver activity, grazing, just to restore that system to a much more functional system where the floodplain is reconnected, those habitats can thrive in the wetland areas. So a huge scope to do something amazing here. This is a shot of Moor Marsh, which I just absolutely love, and this is after some of the restoration work we did on that site, restoring ditches and implementing scrapes. And it's produced this amazing, beautiful little site full of wetland. It almost looks very beavy already, but that's just through our man-made intervention. So chuck beavers into the mix and we'll be able to achieve so much more. And that seamlessly rolls into beavers.
So this is what I'd like to cover. I'll start off by beginning with the feasibility study that the Trust had commissioned on the Isle of Wight in 2020, and that really got the ball rolling with this project. From there, I'll talk about the consultation work that we've been doing since I've been in post, and I'll also talk about the baseline survey and documenting what we already have on our fantastic nature reserves so that we can make the case that beavers are improving those. I'll also briefly go over the governance of the project, the beaver management strategy that I'm writing, and then finish up with an update on government policy, which has been quite radical in changing over the last year. So, we had our feasibility study commissioned in 2020, as I mentioned, and this was written by leading beaver ecologists and University of Exeter hydrologists. So they came down to the island and did a site visit along the Eastern Yar in the spring, and then wrote up their findings and delivered us a report in the October of 2020. So one of the main things that came out of this report was the modelling data that was done by the University of Exeter hydrologists. And basically what we're looking at here is a snapshot of rivers across the island, and each of those chunks are weighted as to their ability to support beavers. And so beavers, obviously being aquatic, need water, so we've got our rivers outlined there, but they also, being herbivores, need vegetation as well. So the yellow colour there indicates preferred habitat, where you've got that deciduous woodland which they love to eat. So huge amounts of that present across the island, and Hampshire as well for that matter, as you can see, but particularly on the island along the Eastern Yar, which is our longest river. So the feasibility study concluded that the entire catchment of the Eastern Yar, including the proposed release site, is highly suitable for beaver release and long-term occupation. And by release site, what they are referring to is Newchurch Moors Nature Reserve, which they concluded is exceptionally good habitat for beaver due to the presence of the interconnecting freshwater ponds, those peat extraction pits that now make a lovely lake, which are surrounded by shrubby willow vegetation, which is beaver's favourite food. So, because of the rather positive outcome of that feasibility study, I was then hired on last year, and since I've been in position, I've been leading on consultation, which is an integral component of our licence application. So, I've been working really hard with a number of stakeholders, doing lots of engagement, so lots of presentations such as these, also a number of guided walks, public events, and us and our comms team have been doing a huge amount of media outreach as well, social media and in the press, and also TV and radio. So this is just a brief snapshot of what I've been up to over the past year. A huge amount of presentations, that's that blue bar that towers in the middle there. This is such a good way of advocating the benefits of beavers. But also a large number of stakeholder engagement meetings, so stakeholders such as the Environment Agency, Natural England, Southern Water, etc. A fair number of individual landowner consultations as well, and then a huge amount of other media engagement, drop-in sessions working with schools and children, etc. So we also did a door-drop questionnaire this year alongside our membership team. We did a membership ask that got delivered to all 70,000 addresses on the island, and there was a questionnaire about beaver reintroduction as part of that. We also ran an online version in order to maximise participation in that survey. And so it landed on doorsteps in February of this year, and then I wrote up our results and released those in July. So we were really happy with how it went. We had really great engagement with it. Almost 5,000 people responded to it, both to the physical door drop and the online questionnaire. And of those that responded, 89% of respondents were in favour of a beaver release on the island, which is really encouraging. We do really feel that that gives us a mandate to continue our aspirations. So, because of the really positive outcomes of our consultation work, This year we have been focusing a lot on baseline surveying across our estate because it will be so important to be able to communicate the benefits that beavers can bring. So these are just a few photos of what we've been up to this year. We did some amphibian surveys, so this is a picture of our Isle of Wight team doing some torchlight surveys at the lake at New Church Moors. We also did some really intensive botanical surveys throughout the estate, and we brought in a specialist aquatic, I think he was a specialist in liverworts and mosses, so some pretty dedicated aquatic vegetation work there. We also brought our ecology team over from the mainland, so you've got Tom there doing some macroinvertebrate sampling, that's in Scotchwell's Brook, believe it or not. We've also got New Church and District Piscatorial Society giving us their fish data, what they're collecting on our sites. We've done a lot about macroinvertebrate surveying and water voles as well. We had a water vole survey commissioned in 2020. So, in terms of the governance of the project, we have now formed a steering group, so that meets quarterly. We've had 2 meetings so far, the first of which was in June, another in September, and we've got another one coming up imminently in December, and 24 stakeholder organisations are represented on that group, and those with logos are represented there. In terms of beaver management, I am writing a beaver management strategy. We do recognise that beavers as ecosystem engineers will need management, and by writing this strategy, what we are doing is creating a framework under which beavers would be managed, obviously subject to successful licence application and release. So this details a large amount of risk assessment to identify assets, and it's also being developed with stakeholder input, so this has been put in front of our steering group so that they can feed in any concerns and we can address those preemptively. So in terms of beaver management, this will be carried out according to this management hierarchy that was developed by Devon Wildlife Trust, and they developed this in order to manage the free-living, notorious wild population of beavers that they have on the River Otter. And so this has since shaped national management policy as well. So it begins with education and outreach. As I mentioned, we're very much in the depths of this at the moment. So what we are doing is working particularly with our riverside landowners, giving them an understanding of any likely impacts they could see to their property using that modelling data. We're also doing lots of guided walks, talks and consultation, and a fair amount of myth busting as well, it has to be said. From there, beavers can be then managed through risk avoidance. So if beavers were to be introduced onto the island, it's quite predictable what they would do. We know that they're aquatic, we know that they like to eat trees, so if there were any trees, for example, that people really wouldn't want eaten, these can be identified in advance and protected. And we've got our very own Kate Garman there. Learning how to do this, we went on a field trip to Germany this year, and there she is painting this willow with sand-based paint, and that rough texture can deter gnawing. And trees can also be protected with fencing, either individually, as you can see there with that wire mesh, or entire groves of trees can be fenced off as well. So in the event of any conflict arising, this then leads us to mitigation, which is all about solving and resolving that conflict if it does occur. And this could potentially be through manipulating water levels. So if beavers were to build a dam in a place which wasn't welcome, then these dams can be managed either through notching them and lowering the water level, as you can see there in the picture, removing the dam completely, or perhaps the best case scenario is by using a beaver deceiver. And you can see one there up the top there. So essentially what that is a pipe that goes through the dam and allows water to continue to flow. So you get the benefit of both having the habitat and an existing pond, but that water level is managed to a tolerable level by the height of that pipe. So, if conflict resolution and risk avoidance measures are not sufficient to resolve any conflict, the next step down the management hierarchy is that of live trapping and translocation. And this can move beavers from areas where there is zero tolerance of their activity to places where they can more happily be active. And so these Bavarian-style live traps are used for that. They are baited with fruit. In this case, I think you've got some apples down there in the trap there. And then once the beaver enters the trap, the lid snaps shut and then they can be moved elsewhere. The final step in the management hierarchy is that of lethal control, and obviously this now needs to be caveated with the fact that beavers have very recently been given native species protected status in England. They've had native species protected status in Scotland since 2019, but only on the 1st of October in 2022, so this year has that been the case in England as well. So it's now an offence to capture, kill, disturb or injure beavers or damage breeding sites or resting places without a licence from Natural England, which is very good news. And so one final component of the licence application would be the exit strategy. So this would be triggered if the project were ever to run out of funding, for example, if the beavers were found to be causing significant negative impacts, or if the welfare of the beavers themselves was compromised. perhaps through persecution. And so if this eventuality ever was to take place, then beavers would be live trapped using those Bavarian live traps and translocated to the mainland. And given the island's geographic location, the fact that carrying capacity would be fairly limited and distribution would also be constrained, we feel that this would be feasible. So just to give you a brief whistle-stop tour of updates on government policy. When I first began on this position back in August last year, DEFRA was simultaneously running a consultation on beaver management, so I really hit the ground running in addressing this. So in this DEFRA consultation, they did state that existing wild populations of beavers in England would be allowed to remain, and that they will be in favour of granting licences for wild releases of beavers into other catchments as long as they conform with IUCN guidelines, which is very encouraging. As a result of that, most recently we've seen some further updates with government policy and guidance. The government website now provides landowners a how-to guide and how to manage beavers, so in terms of that dam manipulation or that tree protection, things like that. And it also outlines the class licensing framework for any more invasive procedures such as live trapping and translocation that would be required. From there, on the 1st of October, as I've already mentioned, beavers now have native species protected status. So that occurred by adding beavers onto Schedule 2 of the Habitats Regulations, which are still in place as of now. Beavers do remain on Schedule 9 of the Wildlife Countryside Act, so that does mean that licensing is still required to release them, but they have transitioned from Part 1B, where they were considered not normally present, to Part 1A, where they're now considered native animals, which is just super encouraging. We have also seen the government announcement of a couple of countryside stewardship grants. And so these are available for farmers and landowners that are in scheme in order to apply for fencing protection for permanent crops and for individual trees, which is a really encouraging sign about the sustainable management long-term of beavers across the country. As for wild release licence applications are still not currently being accepted by DEFRA, and the wild release criteria have not yet been released. But we are hopeful that with this positive progression that we are seeing, that this won't be too long and we'll be ready for them when they do. So, in terms of the conclusions, the consultation so far has been going really well. It will continue, obviously. We're also continuing to capture that snapshot of our baseline conditions, and I'm continuing to work in the background on our wild release licensing documents, ready for when they can be submitted. So in conclusion, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust would love to release beavers onto the Eastern Yard in order to boost our biodiversity, enhance our climate resilience and deliver ecosystem services for islanders for many years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jamie and Izzy. Now we've got a couple of short videos. The first one is to give you an overview of our seagrass restoration project. And then we have a short video at the end just showing you some messages from the staff. So sit back and enjoy.
My name's Tim Ferrero. I'm the Senior Specialist for Marine Conservation at the Trust. And for the last nearly 2 years, I've been leading our Solent Seagrass Restoration Project. We started this work back in April 2021, building on over 10 years of work actually surveying seagrass meadows around the Solent, finding out where they were and how big they were. But we wanted to build on that expertise and knowledge and see if we could do something more proactive. And so the idea of us getting involved in seagrass restoration slowly developed. We found a fantastic partner in Boscalis Westminster who was willing to fund a 2-year R&D pilot project, and we got started. Of course, we had to continue surveying the meadows that we wanted to work on so that we knew what was happening with them when the plants were flowering and beginning to set seed, because of course seagrass plants are the only marine flowering plants. And by the beginning of the autumn last year, 2021, we had been out working in Langston Harbour on the mud there, using bodyboards and special walking patterns attached to our feet. We'd been out and collected seagrass seed from the dwarf seagrass, Zostra nultii, which is one of the Solent's seagrass species. This one tends to be a bit more intertidal and a bit more muddy. The other species, Zostera marina, the common eelgrass, tends to be more subtidal, and it's really quite a big plant with leaves up to 70 centimetres long. When we had collected our seed, it was taken to Portsmouth University, where we handed it over to our other partners in this project, the Institute of Marine Science. The seed was rotted out, which is like maturing, so the seed drops out of the flowering heads of the plants called spathes, and we concentrated those seeds and got ready to plant them. And so last year on the 1st of December, we found ourselves out again in Langstone Harbour with a fantastic group of 14 volunteers, and we planted 2 experimental plots. Our seed was in what we call seed pods, sort of Hessian biodegradable bags with some sediment and the seed inside. We experimented with 15 and 30 seeds per bag, and we deployed 2 square plots, one 15 metres by 15 metres and one 12 metres by 12 metres.
Hello, I'm Ellie Parker. I'm the Marine Officer for the Solar Seagrass Restoration Project, and I'm responsible for developing and leading on the volunteer programme and working with local communities to engage and educate them about the wonders of seagrass. So we launched the volunteer role in January 2022, the Solar Seagrass Champion role, and we've now got over 140 volunteers signed up, and they are involved in all aspects from the project, from monitoring and surveying our existing seagrass meadows to collecting the seagrass seed, packing it into Hessian seed pods and then planting it back out into the Solent as part of our restoration work. In March we had our first seagrass restoration work of 2022, where we were donated seeds from the Zostera marina seagrass species, also known common eelgrass, from the Ocean Conservation Trust, and we planted a strip in Langstone Harbour on the Hayling Island side and at Seaview, and we had our wonderful volunteers join us for the seed pod packing at the Institute of Marine Sciences with our academic partners on the project, the University of Portsmouth, and then they came and helped us to deploy those seed pods out at Langstone and Seaview.
Then really it's a case of waiting. So over the spring and over the summer we went out and visited our plots, and this is where I think it starts getting interesting and seagrass restoration starts becoming a little more complicated than we thought. So on the Isle of Wight at Seaview, we grew some seedlings. We actually saw seedlings coming out of our Hessian bags, and we were very excited. We didn't necessarily grow a green lawn of seagrass, but we think that that actually proved our system was working, and we simply had to refine it. In Langstone Harbour, the situation was a bit more complicated. We think that we did see some seedlings alongside at the very edge of one of our plots, but there also appeared to be some natural recruitment in that area. But then, unfortunately, the green algae growing season took hold, and because of the elevated nutrients in the Solent, things like agricultural runoff, nitrates, the sewage inputs that we have into Langstone Harbour, the algal cover really became quite thick and smothered both of our restoration plots to the extent that we couldn't see what was happening underneath. So what are our current plans? We've collected more Zostera noltii seed just recently. We've been out in Langstone collecting again, and we'll be deploying again in Langstone Harbour with some changes to how we do things, and also we're going to try and actually remove that algae as it grows. So we're going to basically tend our garden a bit more diligently. Earlier in the summer we collected seeds from Zostera marina on the Isle of Wight at Seaview.
We were out at Seaview on the Isle of Wight with our amazing team of Solar Seagrass Champion volunteers who were helping us to collect seagrass seed from the Zostera marina species through wading and snorkelling. So we, as a team, were snorkelling through the seagrass meadow and finding the flowering shoots which contained developing seagrass seed, and then collecting this and putting it into our mesh bags. We were rewarded for our efforts by the wonderful sighting of courting pipefish, stalk jellyfish, and even juvenile bass, which acted as a wonderful reminder of all the amazing marine life that our seagrass meadows support. That seed has now been taken to the Institute of Marine Sciences at the University of Portsmouth until we're ready to redeploy them and plant them back out again on the Isle of Wight coastline.
Why do we want to restore seagrass in the Solent? Well, we know that our seagrass meadows are one of the absolute keystone marine habitats in the Solent. Fantastically important for supporting biodiversity. They support commercially important species, and of course seagrass have this tremendously important blue carbon role, sinking carbon into the seabed and locking it away. So they're fantastically important habitats, and we know that over the last 100 years we've lost over 90% of our seagrass. So when we look out over the Solent and we see quite a lot of seagrass, it's actually amazing to think that we're actually still seeing a relic, a fragment of the size and scale of that habitat in the past. So looking forward, we're hoping to continue our relationship with Boscalis Westminster. We work with them, we work with our students at Portsmouth. We have a group of students at the University of Delft in Holland working on ways to help us upscale, because that's the plan. Ultimately, we want to plant successfully large areas of seagrass meadow. And all the time we are looking to find new partners, new ways of working to really ensure that our seagrass restoration can be a really great success and help us towards our vision of a wilder Solent.
I'm the Director of Nature Recovery for Wilder Wight and Wilder Seas.
Assistant Reserves Officer for the Solent site.
Technical Specialist.
Senior Communications Officer.
Training Officer.
State Meadows Reserves Officer.
CRM and Data Insights Manager. Reserves Officer.
Senior Membership and Support Officer.
Fundraising Development Manager.
Climate Positive and Sustainability Lead.
Education Officer.
Policy and Advocacy Manager.
Reserves Officer for North.
MOD Projects Manager. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.